Welcome back to Stories for Sleep tonight. I want to tell you about a place people tried to forget. Not because of what happened there, but because of what still remains. They say apartment 1004 was left empty for nearly 10 years, not because of the rent, not because of the location, not even because of the age of the building, but because at night, a woman stands at the window. She doesn't move. She doesn't speak. She only watches, her face pale against the glass. Her hands pressed lightly to the frame, her eyes wide open. And if you ever dare to look long enough to see her face clearly, she will know you saw her. And from that moment forward, she will not wait outside the window anymore. She will wait inside the room. Michael did not believe in ghosts. He believed in migraines, in past due rent, in awkward silences and emails that said, let's circle back. But spirits, hauntings, the supernatural, that belonged to a part of him he had long since buried, along with the drawings he used to make of the woman under his bed. Still, something about apartment 1004 unsettled him the moment he stepped inside. It wasn't the peeling wallpaper, or the broken hallway light, or the smell of dust that seemed to have seeped into the walls like old smoke. It was the window, large floor to ceiling, framed in pale wood and sitting directly opposite the front door. From the hallway, the moment you entered, you could see it, and through it a view of the city, so distant, it almost looked imaginary. Tiny glowing rooftops, blinking towers, the hum of distant lives he no longer felt a part of. But the glass reflected more than just light. It had presence, as if someone had been standing at the window moments before he arrived. As if the glass still remembered being watched from the other side. The landlord hadn't said much, just handed over the keys and muttered something about how most people don't like high floors. When Michael asked how long the place had been empty, the man looked down and said, "A while." He didn't press. He liked silence, that's what he told himself. He had come here to be alone. The first night passed quietly. He unpacked slowly, his life reduced to 3 boxes and a tired cat named Bramble. By midnight he had set up his bed, plugged in the kettle, and stood in front of the window drinking lukewarm tea. It was strange, he thought, how quiet a city could become from 10 floors up, like watching a storm behind glass. As he turned to leave the living room, something caught his eye, a shape, brief, faint, not a person, not yet, just the idea of one. The outline of a figure standing outside the window. Not pressed close, not moving. Just there. Watching. He blinked and it was gone, a smudge of his own reflection, he told himself. Just exhaustion. He turned off the light and went to bed. Bramble did not follow him. She sat at the foot of the window, ears low-tail, still. She stayed there until dawn. The next day, Michael forgot about the shadow. He had too much to do, resumes to rewrite, a therapist to call, and cancel, a mother to ignore. But when night returned, so did the silence. It pressed in heavier this time. The refrigerator buzzed, louder, the clock ticked slower, and when he walked past the window on his way to the kitchen, he saw it again. A figure still facing in, head tilted slightly, just outside the glass, 10 floors above the ground. He turned on the lights. Nothing, the window was clean, the street below empty, but Bramble hissed, not at the window, at the space behind it, as if something had stepped away just in time. Michael didn't sleep that night. At 3:12 a.m. he walked to the window again, not to look out, to look in at himself, and just behind his reflection he saw her, a woman. Pale lips, slightly parted, eyes wide. Her face was not angry, it was patient, like someone who had waited far too long to be noticed. He stumbled back, heart slamming. When he looked again, she was gone. But on the glass, barely visible, a pair of handprints remained, perfectly still, perfectly placed, and very much on the inside. Michael woke to the sound of his own breath. Fast, shallow. The kind of breathing you only notice when your body forgets how to slow down. He wasn't sure what had pulled him from sleep. There was no alarm, no sound. Just an overwhelming sense that something had shifted in the room while he was unconscious. Bramble was missing. She usually curled up by his feet or the radiator. But now the bed was empty except for him. The door to the bedroom stood half open, gently. Swaying, he called her name. Once, twice, nothing. The silence was too clean, like the apartment had been wrapped in cotton while he slept. He stepped into the living room barefoot. The floor was cold. The early morning light spilled faintly through the tall window, painting soft lines across the hardwood. It looked peaceful. Except for one thing. The window was open, not wide, but just enough for air to move through, enough for sound to escape, enough for someone to enter. Michael froze. The window had no handle, no latch, no mechanism he had found. It was a sealed fixture. When he first toured the apartment, the landlord had even joked, "No risk of falling out from here." That thing was shut tighter than a vault, yet now it stood slightly ajar, just a crack. And beside it on the sill, a small grey paw print. He stepped closer. Bramble sat in the far corner of the room. Not curled, not relaxed, perched, eyes locked on the window. Her tail twitched once every few seconds, not with curiosity, with fear. Michael reached for the window. The air was cold, wet. It smelled like dust and flowers left in a sealed box for too long. He looked down. The street below was still. No cars, no pedestrians, just morning fog and the quiet hum of a distance. He closed the window, slowly pressing his weight into the frame. It didn't move. No matter how hard he pushed, it stayed open, exactly where it wanted to be. That day he didn't leave the apartment. He told himself it was because of the job search, or maybe because he wasn't feeling well. But the truth lived deeper in his chest, in the place where instinct whispered something had looked in and something might be waiting for the chance to look again. He covered the window with an old blanket. The room dimmed, the light thinned, but the feeling remained, as if the glass had never been the true barrier. That night he left every light on. He kept Bramble in the bedroom. He tried not to look toward the living room, but just past midnight, the blanket moved. It didn't fall, it didn't get pulled, it shifted, as if someone ran their hand down its center, slowly, lovingly. He didn't sleep after that. And in the morning he found something on the kitchen counter, a single long strand of dark hair, coiled like a question mark, still damp. Michael stopped using the clock. It wasn't broken, but it had started showing strange times. At first it would skip minutes, jumping ahead a few seconds whenever he blinked. Then it began blinking midnight at 3 p.m. and sometimes it would freeze entirely. When he looked directly at it, he tried replacing the batteries. It laughed at him. Not audibly, but in that subtle way objects sometimes do when they know something you don't. He started writing the time on sticky notes, every hour on the hour, just to feel in control. But he never found the last note he wrote. They always vanished one by one, until the only thing left taped to the fridge was a drawing. A child's scrawl in pencil. It showed a tall figure at a window, and next to the figure, a man, sleeping in a bed. He didn't draw her, at least not that he remembered. The next time he saw her was during the day, not at night, not in the shadows, but at noon while brushing his teeth. He leaned over the sink, rinsed, looked up. And there she was outside the window. Closer, so much closer, her hands now pressed flat to the glass, her face not fully visible, just a silhouette behind the sunlight, hair dark and heavy, eyes wide open, staring at him, not through the glass, at him. At the version of him she was waiting for. He stepped back, knocked over the glass. It shattered. When he looked again, she was gone. But the light had changed. The sun had dimmed. Not behind a cloud. Behind something else. That night, he slept with the door locked. Every lamp in the apartment burned through the hours. He lined salt across the base of the window. He didn't know why. It felt like the right thing to do. Bramble stayed hidden under the bed, not sleeping, not moving, just waiting. At 3:12 a.m. the lights flickered, once, twice, then they all went out. He didn't move. Not at first. Then he heard it, the soft slide of fabric like a hand brushing the curtain, the sound of feet on hardwood. Then nothing. Just breathing. Not his own. He whispered into the dark, "You're outside." Silence. "You can't come in." From behind him, barely audible, a woman's voice answered, "I'm already here." Michael covered the window. Not with a blanket this time. He hammered plywood across it, drilled it in with shaking hands, 4 nails in each corner. Still it wasn't enough. He still felt her, not outside, inside the walls, in the stillness between his breaths, in the way Bramble wouldn't look at him anymore. The mirrors came next. It started with the bathroom. He went to shave and found her face in the steam. Not just a smudge, not imagination, clear eyes wide, mouth closed, watching him through the fog as if it were glass. He scrubbed the mirror clean. She didn't fade. She smiled. He covered it with a towel. That afternoon the television turned on by itself. No picture, just static. He tried the remote. Nothing. He unplugged it. Still the screen pulsed. In the flicker of black and white he saw her. Only for a second, but she was closer, so close, her breath fogged the inside of the glass. He threw the TV out the window. It shattered on the street below. A man walking by looked up, shouted something, but Michael didn't hear him. He was too busy staring into the kitchen sink, because in the puddle of dishwater she was there again, looking up at him from below the surface, hands pressed against the bottom of the basin, mouth open this time, not screaming, whispering. He leaned closer and the faucet turned itself on. He screamed and backed away, slipping on the tile. The water didn't stop, it rose and overflowed. The reflection never left, only twisted as if waving goodbye. That night Michael smashed every mirror in the apartment, covered the TV with a blanket, drained the sink and threw a towel over it. Still he saw her in the gleam of his phone screen, in the glass of his coffee mug, in the dark of his pupils, when he tried to meet his own eyes. By morning he understood. She no longer needed the window, she didn't need glass, she only needed him to look, because every time he saw her, every time he noticed, she stepped a little closer. And now she was no longer standing in his reflection. Now when he looked into the mirror, he saw nothing at all. No face, no eyes, just darkness, and her voice whispering behind his teeth, "I'll let you borrow me until you forget who you are." Michael had stopped answering his phone, stopped checking email, stopped opening the door when the landlord knocked. The outside world felt thin now, like a photograph taped over something much older, something truer. The only thing that felt real was the apartment. And her. She was everywhere, and yet nowhere visible. He stopped trying to escape her. He began searching for her instead. It began with the sound, a hollow tapping. Behind the wall in the bedroom, always 3 taps. Rhythmic, patient, familiar. He pressed his ear to the drywall, felt warmth, a heartbeat. That wall wasn't just hiding something, it was holding something in. He tore it open. With a hammer at first, then with his bare hands, dry plaster flaked under his nails, cracked paint clouded the air. Behind it, a hollow space, not wiring, not pipes. A gap wide enough to crawl into, and inside he found a box, dust-covered heavy. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all of the same woman, some old, some new, some taken in this very apartment. By the window, on the floor, in the bathroom mirror, in one photo she stood behind a man sleeping on the couch. Michael didn't recognize the man, not at first, until he looked again. It was him. There were drawings too, made in pencil, smudged and frantic, the same image over and over. A woman in the window, sometimes smiling, sometimes screaming, sometimes gone, but always there. The final drawing was different. A sketch of apartment 1004, except this time the door was open, and the woman was inside. Beneath the photos was a single note, written in a looping, hurried hand. "She doesn't leave. She doesn't forget, she only waits. And now she remembers you." Michael dropped the paper. His breath caught. From the hollow space in the wall something moved, slowly, deliberately. He stepped back. Dust shifted on the floor behind him. A whisper slithered past his ear. "You made room for me." He turned. The door to the bedroom was gone, replaced by a smooth wall. No exit, only reflection. The woman stood there, not behind glass, not in shadow. In the room facing him. her eyes filled with something deeper than hate, deeper than sorrow. Recognition. He tried to speak. She lifted one finger, pressed it to her lips, and said nothing, because there was no need. He remembered now the photo, the sketch, the room that had always been hers, the one he was never supposed to enter, and now could never leave. Michael. Stop dreaming? Not because he slept well, but because sleep no longer felt like rest, it felt like absence. Hours that passed without sensation. And when he woke, the apartment always looked just a little bit different. A photo he didn't remember owning appeared on the counter. The kitchen table was set for two. A hairbrush sat by the mirror, not his. He looked into his phone's front camera. It showed his face. But only for a moment, then it flickered. And for the briefest second, he saw her. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as him, wearing his expression, smiling with his teeth and blinking with eyes that were no longer his. He called his sister. She answered groggy. He said, "It's me." There was a pause. Then she said, "Who is this?" He tried to explain. She laughed, nervous. "I don't have a brother." Then the line went dead. He checked his social media. Every photo of him was gone. Every comment he ever posted had vanished. Every message he remembered sending had no reply. He was no longer blocked. He was never there. That afternoon, someone knocked at the door. Michael didn't answer, but the peephole showed a man in a uniform, a delivery driver. He was holding flowers. The card read, "To her apartment." "Hen 4, I've missed you." Michael didn't take them. He didn't have to. When he turned back around, the bouquet was already on the kitchen table. He opened his closet. Half of his clothes were gone, replaced by dresses. Soft, pale, familiar. He didn't scream. He just sat down on the bed, stared at the wall and whispered. "What do you want from me?" From the bathroom mirror, her voice answered, "Nothing. You gave it freely." Later that night he found himself humming, a tune he didn't recognize. He stood in front of the mirror and watched himself smile. Only it wasn't a reflection anymore. It was her inside his skin, trying him on like a memory that fit too well. He whispered, "I don't want to disappear." The voice in his mind replied, "Then don't stay with me as me." Outside, the city continued without him. Neighbors passed by without ever seeing him. Old friends walked past the building without looking up. But every so often, they saw her. Just for a second, standing in a window 10 stories up, wearing a familiar face, smiling, patient, waiting. The building still stood, brick and concrete, 10 stories tall, rooted at the edge of the city like a stubborn weed. But no one could find the 10th floor anymore. People rode the elevator and it stopped at 9. Stairwells ended with blank doors and locked panels. Even long-time residents began to shrug when asked. "There's no 10th floor," they said. "There never was." City records changed the floor plans, updated insurance documents, removed one unit from their lists. Apartment 104 was deleted. No announcement, no construction, just gone. A woman named Dana used to work with Michael. She remembered his voice, his coffee order, the way he always wore mismatched socks. But when she searched her contacts, his name wasn't there. She couldn't remember his last name, or his birthday, or where he lived. She visited the building once just to be sure. She took the stairs, counted them carefully. 9th floor, then roof access, nothing in between. But when she passed the window on the landing, she saw someone, a woman, pale, silent, watching her. Dana turned to the man beside her and said, "Did you see?" But the man was gone. There had never been a man. People began to notice strange things: mail for residents who didn't exist, packages addressed to names no one recognized. One envelope simply read, "For the one who listens." Inside was a mirror. No reflection, only darkness, and a sound. 3 soft knocks. Downstairs, the doorman quit without notice. He refused to explain why, only said, "Something upstairs is moving that shouldn't." He wouldn't say, "Whose apartment?" only whispered, "She's opening the door from the inside." A building inspector came one morning to investigate. The complaint was simple. One resident's floor plan didn't match the public blueprints. He climbed the stairs, took measurements, knocked on doors. He reached the 9th floor, then called his supervisor, confused. "There's a hallway here that shouldn't exist." He walked in and never called back. When they traced the signal, it led to a space that wasn't on the blueprints, a narrow corridor, just 4 steps long. And at the end, a red door. Since then, no one mentions the 10th floor, not the residents, not the city, not even the building itself. The call buttons no longer light up past 9. The elevators skip a number. And if you ask someone about apartment 1004, they'll frown, then they'll smile faintly and say, "No one lives there. No one ever did." But sometimes at night they hear footsteps above them, furniture being moved, a chair dragged across hardwood. And just for a moment they remember someone. They'd sung, a name on the edge of their tongue, a man they used to know. Someone who lived upstairs before the floor disappeared, before she took his name. His name was Grant Holloway. Podcaster, debunker skeptic, he had made a career out of exposing fake psychics, staged hauntings, and abandoned buildings with too much online mythology and not enough foundation. His show, Ghost Logic, had over 2 million subscribers. He called himself rational, grounded. But when he first read the thread about apartment 1004, he felt something strange. Not fear, not curiosity, recognition. The details were vague. A floor that vanished, an apartment that erased its tenants, a woman who appeared in glass and never left. Once she was seen, the kind of urban legend that spreads because it's just unclear enough to believe. He packed his bag, grabbed his mic, and headed for the city. When he arrived at the building, everything looked normal. The doorman, young and clearly nervous, didn't make eye contact. Grant showed his press badge, looking into a zoning discrepancy. The doorman nodded slowly, said nothing, but as Grant turned toward the elevators, the man whispered behind him, "You'll only find her if she remembers you." Grant paused, turned back. The man was gone. So was the desk, just bare floor, and an old chair. He took the stairs, climbed past floors marked 1 through 9, then a blank landing, no number, no sign. But there it was, a hallway, short wrong. And at the end, the door. Red. No number, no handle, just slightly open. A chill passed through him. He told himself it was draft. He stepped forward, recorder in hand. This is Grant Holloway, Ghost Logic, documenting an unlisted space above the 9th floor. No official apartment number, no documentation. But someone's clearly been here recently. He pushed the door open. It didn't resist. Inside the apartment was cold, not dusty, not abandoned, just still. A chair near the window, a table with 1 teacup, a mirror covered with a sheet. He approached the mirror, pulled the cloth away. Nothing, no reflection. He lifted the mic. The mirror in this unit is non-functional. Possible 2-way glass or voided silver backing. No image is being. Then he saw it, not in the mirror, in the window behind him. A figure not standing, sitting in his chair, wearing his face, smiling. He spun around. The chair was empty, but the teacup was warm. Grant backed out of the room, breath short, leaving the space now. Might be residual EMF or exposure response. The hallway was gone, only a blank wall. The door behind him clicked shut. That night, his listeners heard a new episode uploaded without title, just breathing. For 23 minutes, then a voice, soft, familiar. Grant's voice, but off slower. As if mimicking, "There is no apartment 1004, there is only the window and she's looking for someone new." The episode remained online for only 8 hours, Then it vanished. No deletion logs, no cache. Listeners posted about it frantically across forums and private Discord channels. Some tried to re-upload their saved files, but each time they did, the audio became corrupted. Their devices froze. Some refused to start again. One phone played only static until it was fully reset. And in that static, there was breathing. A user named @mirrorimage13 posted a transcript of the final 2 minutes. It was mostly quiet until a voice whispered, "I know you're listening. You're facing the screen. But you should turn around." The post gained over 12,000 comments, then disappeared. His account was locked, his profile image changed to a blurred photo or window, and behind the glass, a face. Others began reporting stranger things, hearing her voice during unrelated videos, seeing her face flicker for a split second during YouTube ads. One user paused a documentary about abandoned buildings and caught her reflection in a puddle on screen. She wasn't there in the next frame, but her handprint was, and it was on his screen inside, not on the surface. A popular streamer went live to debunk the myth. He wore a headset and joked, "If she shows up, I'll ask her to co-host." Halfway through the broadcast, he paused, stared directly into the camera and smiled. Not his usual grin, slower, wider, his eyes unfocused. Viewers flooded the chat. "Bro, are you good? What's wrong with his face? Why is he not blinking?" Then his voice dropped. He leaned close to the mic and said, "She doesn't need stories anymore. She has listeners now." The stream ended. His channel hasn't posted since. People began avoiding mirrors. Some smashed their webcams, others refused to listen to podcasts after dark. But it didn't matter. She had already been seen, already heard, and now she was moving through images, through memory, through you. And sometimes when you're falling asleep, phone face down beside you, screen dark, you'll hear it. Not a voice, not a scream. Just a knock. 3 times, faint. Not from the door, not from the window, but from somewhere closer, a reflection you forgot to turn away from. There is no ending. There never was, because apartment 104 doesn't stop existing when people stop talking about it. It adapts, it listens, it waits. And once someone hears the story, once they picture the woman at the window, the red door, the hallway that doesn't belong, they've already opened it. You might be asking yourself now, was Michael real? Was Grant a hoax? Is this just another scary story for the internet? But there's something deeper you're really wondering, and you feel it now, don't you? That shift in the air, that chill behind your shoulders, that subtle sense of being watched. Because you heard her name. You imagined her face. You pictured her standing outside the window, just beyond the reach of light. And in doing so, you made space, you gave her room. She doesn't need your permission, just your attention. And now that you've followed the story this far, listened this long, leaned this close, you've given her exactly what she needs. And if tonight you catch something in the mirror behind you, if your phone flickers when you're sure the screen is off, if a window in your house seems just slightly more open than you remember, don't worry, don't run, don't speak her name, just do one thing. Close your eyes, because it's not that she wants to hurt you. She just doesn't want to be alone. Not anymore. So if she asks to come in, she already has. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Some stories are meant to be forgotten, but others are only ever remembered when they're shared. If tonight you feel something in the corner of your room, or hear the faint echo of 3 soft knocks, don't be afraid. Just remember, she doesn't knock to scare you. She knocks because she knows you're listening. Sleep well, and if you dream, let her wait by the window, not inside. Good night.